Tani, we've heard of several cases where malicious actors use phishing attempts to target victims. We heard of one where the FBI sentenced a fraudster for, carrying out these phishing attempts over internet and email. Another one, a Rhode Island woman was sentenced for targeting political campaign, employees and candidates. And then in a third one, we saw where a man was targeting victims, pretending to be their internet security provider, asking them to reset their passwords. And basically what he did was he got access to their credentials and to the information that was stored in the cloud and compromised their photos on the internet. So very interesting tales of what happens with these phishing attempts. Now, for those that don't know, what is phishing?
So phishing is an email that has malicious intent, right? So it could include a link to direct you to a website to, as you said, put in your credentials, or maybe an attachment that will download some malware. But we see fewer and fewer attachments making it through, at least on the enterprise side. Now, consumer, if you're using your Gmail or some, Gmail does a really good job of filtering that stuff out. I've used Gmail for years, and I have maybe one email that I know that was a phishing attempt. So it does a really good job of making sure, protecting consumers, right, for their personal email. And so by getting you to interact with these, they're either phishing for information, right? So they're trying to get you to interact with them, to give your information, or to install malware. So those are basically the two types of phishing email. There's business email compromise, what we talk a little bit about, but that's really trying to get you to engage in a conversation, to elicit you to send funds or money. So those are kind of the types of phishing threats that we see, either from an organization or even from a consumer standpoint.
Yes, and a lot of what we saw and discussed in our previous season was the email phishing attempts, them sending links to the potential victims, hoping that they would click on it, sending them to a spoofing website or some other type of site, and those credentials being harvested. Very interesting how these malicious actors will carry out these the threats. But the goal is to get the victim to click something, to receive their credentials, so that they can either receive funds or access to some other type of information.
Yeah, like any other criminal, right? It's always about the money, right? 9 times out of 10, that is what about. Now, when we're talking about nation states, that's a whole different other aspect, right? And we do see some crossover to, trying to target an individual to make their way in. But at the end of the day, for consumers, it's really about, they're going after your money, right? And if they're going after your information, it's then to further their targets, to target maybe somebody else. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's going after information or that money.
Yes, and we also hear terms like vishing and smishing, where those are targeting the victim with other types of solicitations, smishing being the SMS text messages that they'll send out with links in it to basically do the same.
Yeah, so really at the end of the day, it's all phishing. It's just the medium where it's sent from, right? If it's an email, or if it's your text message, or if it's a voice text or a voicemail, right? At the end of the day, it's phishing. They're phishing for information.
Absolutely, and I love that you break down phishing for information.
Right.
These are terms that, in the cybersecurity, information security conversations, we use quite loosely, not realizing that maybe the consumer does not know why you're calling it phishing. What do you mean?
Right.
And that breaks it down very simply.
And we've done a really good job over the last 10 years, right, where we have highlighted this. If you're working in an organization, you're getting training on what that is, and then we give you information to, I know when I did security awareness training, I'd always had, individuals that would say, well, okay, but what can I give my friends and family, right? So I would direct them to the Stay Safe Online website. There's lots of content there. So I think it's becoming more common knowledge now that people know what phishing is, right? We don't have to explain it as much as we did 10 years ago, but everyone is still being targeted.
Yes, for sure. But you'd be surprised at some of the conversations I have where people are like, what?
Well, so now we have this aging generation that's now online that maybe they didn't grow up with it versus our young ones that they've grown up with it. They've always known it, right? So that's a different audience that we have to do a little bit different training to.
Absolutely.